Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I thought it was about time I made a video of how to tackle the GCSE French Eduqas higher writing. So if you haven't already watched it, about 11 minutes into my foundation writing video, we'll tackle the first question. This video is a shorter video, mainly focusing on question 2 with a little bit about the foundation. But just as I said in the the translation, just as I said in the foundation video, first thing to do when you get into the exam is make sure that you filled out the information at the top of the page correctly with the centre number and your candidate number, and you read through the information on the front of your paper. So this is an hour and a half paper and it's worth 60 marks, which means that you need to multiply the number of marks per question by 1.5 to get the maximum amount of time you can spend on each question. You need to use black ink, so make sure you go to the exam prepared, and you are expected for both questions 1 and 2 to write in paragraphs. So make sure your paragraphs are clear using complete sentences. It says on here, answer all the questions. You will have a choice on some questions of whether to do part A or part B. On question 2, there are 3 separate questions on your paper. So as I said, about 11 minutes into the foundation writing, I've talked through this particular question, which is the crossover question. So I'm not going to do that again, but that video is available on YouTube for you to have a look at. We're really going to focus on tackling this question 2 question, which is the one where you get to show off. So this is the one where you have to distinguish yourself from the other candidates through your knowledge of both the grammar and your understanding of the question. So the first thing to do is to look at the question. So it says, vous écrivez un article pour un magazine français. Présentez et justifiez vos idées et points de vue sur un des thèmes ci-dessous. So you need to give your ideas and your opinions, so viewpoints, just another way of saying opinions, about one of the themes below. And the choices are la technologie et les jeunes et une vie saine. So the first thing I need to do is decide which question I'm going to do. As I said, on your mock, you will have 3 questions. So the choice of question will depend on 2 things. Number 1, can I expand out the bullet points, because you only have 2 bullet points, into 6 separate paragraphs? And number 2, do I know the vocabulary for that topic? So the only way you're going to be able to judge that is by very quickly planning both questions. So we're going to look at the technology question first. La technologie et les jeunes, vous pouvez ajouter plus d'informations, mais vous devez. So you can give more information, but you have to. Expliquez l'importance de la technologie pour les jeunes. So explain the importance of technology for young people. So I need to think about, can I break that up into 3 separate paragraphs? If I can write 3 paragraphs for each point that are about 30 words each, I will cover that word count that I need. So that's what I'm aiming for. So what I might include in the first paragraph is something to show off my knowledge of past tense. So I might start with quand j'étais petit and talk about when I was younger, whether technology was important to me or not. In the second paragraph, I'm going to talk about now. I'm going to think as well about the sentences that I might use. So I'm going to use a ce que phrase here, ce que j'aime le plus. So I'm going to talk about the importance of technology to me. And then in this last bullet point, I'm going to leave it for a minute and have a look what I'm going to do in the other paragraph. So I've shown off in the first paragraph imperfect past tense. In the second one, it's going to be my present tense. At some point, I need to put a future tense in there. So we'll have a look at the second bullet point. Décrire comment vous avez utilisé la technologie. So describe how you've used technology. Well, that's my normal imperfect past tense. So that's my la semaine dernière, j'ai. So I can put that in there. Last week I did what with my technology? I think I need to include conditional tense in there as well. So what I would like, so I think I might do that in that first bullet point question. So I've said whether technology was important when I was younger, what I like the most about technology and why it's important now, and we'll do je voudrais and say what we would like in the future. So describe how you've used technology in the past. In this one, I've used the perfect tense. I might want to talk about what somebody else in my family does with technology to bulk out this one and maybe use the past tense for them. So I might start talking about ma mère est, and I've got a great bit of vocab that I've revised, technophobe. So I'll talk about what she did or didn't do with technology to contrast with my last week sentence, and also to show off those third person verbs. I just need something else to talk about for that. Describe how you've used technology question. So I haven't used the simple future tense, what I'm going to do. So that I'm going to put in this one. La semaine prochaine, je vais. I'm actually quite happy with that. I'm fairly confident I could do a good answer with that one. So I think I will choose that question. But just for the sake of argument, I want to expand out the bullet points on the second question into try and make each bullet point into 3 separate paragraphs and try and come up with something that I can write 30 words for as well. So again, well, this next one's a gift. Explain the importance of a healthy lifestyle. So I could do the same thing again, couldn't I? Quand j'étais petit, so when I was little, actually, the vocab might be easier on this one, so I might actually stick with this question. We could use things like je mangeais, je buvais, and I could contrast it, couldn't I? I could say I used to eat lots of hamburgers and I used to drink lots of Coke, that kind of thing, and build that out. And then I could do the same thing, but say aujourd'hui, ce qui m'est important, so the thing that's important to me, that's a nice phrase that I might have revised as part of my revision, is to be healthy, which is avoir une vie saine. It's a mistake on the question, it should have an E on the end. And then the third one, again, I might use the model that I've picked from question 1, and I'm going to talk about changes that I might make. Je voudrais, and then put something in there. And then the second part of the question says, donnez des exemples de situations cette semaine que vous avez, quand vous avez gardé la forme. So again, it's a similar structure, isn't it? Talk about situations this week where you've been healthy. So I'm going to use the question there to help me. Cette semaine, j'ai. So what did I do this week? I might use this as an example to contrast with another person and show off my third person verb. So I might say, mon petit ami n'est pas très sain. So my boyfriend isn't very healthy, and then I can talk about a third person. And then what I need to include in the last bullet point is again a future tense, la semaine prochaine. So the first thing to do is to try and expand out your bullet points and to try and get into those 2 bullet points, a paragraph where you are talking about what you used to do, a paragraph talking about what you do now, what your opinion is about that thing, a je voudrais paragraph, then something using the passé composé, something talking about another person, and something talking about the future tense. Once you've broken it down into those 6 paragraphs, it's going to be a lot easier for you to write, because just like the 90-worder, you're trying to write 30 words for each section. Okay, so that's the first thing I would do. I'm a little bit torn now as to which question to do, because they both sound good. But I think actually on balance, I'm going to go for the healthy lifestyle question, just because that's going to give me, it's going to be actually easier vocabulary for me. So the next thing I need to think about is just making sure that I cover all of those boxes. So our grade 9 students in the past have quite often done this on their paper. So they've written a little code at the top to show the different tenses they want to include. So you've got present tense, passé composé, imperfect, conditional, future, the je vais future as well, and your subjunctive, your bien que, which all of these tenses are in the Quizlet Higher Structures set. So that's the first one. So the subjunctive is the bien que one. And actually, because I've just done it in the Blitz session, I'm going to use a C clause as well. If I had done this, I would do that. So I've got a little reminder here about those things that I want to include for the grammar side of things to show off a range. And then I'm just going to use my plan over here to help me write it. So let's start with quand j'étais petite, because I've revised that as a set phrase. And I just want to show off my conditional here. So I'm going to say je n'étais pas très saine. So I wasn't very healthy. Why wasn't I very healthy? So ideas and viewpoints. Parce que je ne mangeais que des hamburgers et des frites. So I've added in one of those negatives that we've talked about previously. So when I was younger, I wasn't very healthy because I only ate hamburgers and chips. My opinion about that. À mon avis, j'étais très stupide. Why was that silly? Parce que, let's use an on structure. On sait que, so one knows that. Oh yes, let's use il faut as well, because we know that. Il faut manger beaucoup de fruits et de légumes. And I'm going to steal the phrase in here, pour garder la forme, because that's a nice one. Pour garder la form. I'm fairly sure that's over 30 words for that first one, and I can cross off the imperfect because I've used that twice in different ones. I'm going to add il faut to my structures list because that's another good one. I'm going to use ne que as well, just so that when I remember at the end, I can talk about what to revise. So that's my first paragraph, ticked off, done. So now we need to show that we know we're changing tense. So we're going to use a time phrase. Aujourd'hui, that shouldn't be a capital, so I'll cross it out. Ce qui m'est important. So the thing that is important to me, mener is to lead, une vie saine, comma, donc, therefore, so another good connective, donc, je fais de l'exercice, oops, with a C, not an S, time phrase, 3 fois par semaine. Quelle joie. So what joy. Okay. So the thing that's important to me, what we've got to talk about, the importance of a healthy lifestyle. So we need to actually say why we're doing it, why it's important. We could use that nice phrase that we've come across before. Certains disent que. So some people say that ce n'est pas important de faire de l'exercice. Oops, so some people say it's not important to do exercise, mais je ne suis pas d'accord, but I don't agree. So all of these are phrases that hopefully will be familiar to you. We've done work on things, that the advantages of exercise. So we've seen things like ça diminue le stress et c'est bon pour la morale. So we've seen things like that. It depends what you've revised on the topic, but that would be my reason. And again, I think I've covered that bullet point, and I've definitely talked about the next thing in my plan, which is why it's important to me to do exercise, because it's good for my health. I need to now say what I would like to do. So I'm going to put in, because I want to use, so what have we done there? We've done present tense there. one thing I haven't done is said, so let's cross that out from that, is said something that I would like to do. So I'm going to put in something that I don't do that's healthy that I'd like to change. So I'm going to say, cependant, so however, je ne bois pas, so I don't drink assez, je ne bois pas assez d'eau, I don't drink enough water. Je préfère les boissons gazeuses, so I prefer fizzy drinks. Dans le futur, je voudrais augmenter, so that's a nice verb, to increase ma consommation, my consumption d'eau, car c'est important. Why do I want to do it? Because de rester hydraté. So it's important to stay hydrated. You could just say parce que c'est bon pour la santé, or you could keep it simpler, but I'm trying to show off a range of vocabulary to you as well, show you what a really good answer looks like. So that is my first bullet point done. I've written about a page. My writing's quite big though for the purposes of this video and also because I'm using a Sharpie so it shows up. So it'll probably be about half a page if you've got small writing. So what haven't we included? I've not done my passé composé yet, but we're going to talk about that in that. I've just done the conditional, so I can cross that off. I haven't done a proper future yet, so I'm going to do that, and I haven't done a je vais, and I haven't done a subjunctive or a C clause. So here would be a good place to maybe put in a C clause. If I were to drink more water, I would, what would I do? I would be more healthy in general. So let's do that. Si je buvais. So remember from the Blitz session, if plus imperfect. So I were to drink, je buvais plus d'eau. I would be, so that's where your conditional comes in. Je serais on meilleur. So I've been better. No, hang on, let's change that. Je serais plus en forme, let's say, en général. So if I were to drink more water, I would be in better form in general. So that's my C clause done that I wanted to get in there. So that's the first bullet point done. I'm hoping you can see this. So second bullet point was I wanted to include examples of this week, what I've done. Something about a third person to show off that I know third person verbs, and then this is where I'm going to get my je vais future tense and my future tense in. So let's say although, bien que, sometimes, quelquefois, je sois paresseuse. So although sometimes I am lazy, j'aime beaucoup faire de l'exercice. So we've already said that we do exercise 3 times a week, so I don't want to contradict myself, but I do want to get that Bianca in there. So I'm going to say, although sometimes I'm lazy, I do really like to do exercise, because that's not contradicting what I've already written. Par exemple. So for example, this is where I'm going to come in with my past tense. Set, oops, spelled that wrong. No problem in correcting it as I'm going along. Semaine, j'ai joué. So nice, easy verb. Au foot, le mardi soir. Et j'ai fait du jogging. Yeah. So this week I've played football on Tuesday evening and I've done jogging yesterday. C'était très, what could it have been like? Important parce que Je me suis détendue. So it was very important because I was able to relax. That's because I've revised a reflexive. You could just say c'était bon pour la santé, or c'était amusant, or c'était fantastique if you're not quite sure of the vocab. So I'm crossing off my Bianca sentence. I've done 2 examples there of the passé composé. So literally the only thing that I want to include that I haven't yet is the future tense, which we'll come back to in a minute. So I want to do my 3rd person paragraph. Again, we're going to use some contrasting information, so I'm going to introduce it with par contre. We already decided we're going to write mon petit ami n'est pas très sain. So think about things that aren't healthy. Il mange, let's say he never eats, actually, il ne mange jamais de légumes, so he never eats vegetables. Et il fume trop, he smokes too much. My opinion on that, so let's go for selon moi, just as a difference from mon avis. Il est stupide car fumer we've looked at the disadvantages of smoking. I might have revised some. Let's say est mauvais pour les poumons, so it's bad for your lungs. That's a short paragraph, but to be honest, I think we're good to go with the word count, so I'm just going to move on from there. And the last thing is going to be what I'm going to do next week. And actually what I might do is carry on with the 3rd person. So la semaine prochaine, so next week, we can get our easy future tense in there, the je vais future tense, by changing it to il va, and you should remember that from the song. Il va, what's he going to do? Let's say arrêtez de fumer. Mais ce ne sera pas, it will not be facile. En plus, so in addition, I'm going to put my proper future tense in there for me. Je mangerai. Actually, let's change it to I will cook, because then that makes it links back better to the content. Je cuisinerai des repas, the meals, plus sains pour nous. So, and that's it. So because I've planned it, because I've thought about how I can expand the bullet points, actually the content of it wasn't particularly tricky, and it didn't take me too long to write. I appreciate it'll take you a little bit longer. In terms of how long to spend on this, you can spend up to about 40 minutes on it, because you've got the time. So that's that. What I would do next is, I've included all the structures I want to include. What I would do next is do the translation, and then I will come back to this and read it back through to make sure that I haven't made any daft mistakes, or it might have something that I wanted to include that I'd revised in terms of structures that I wanted to put in, which I can put in. So how do you prepare for this question? Well, the first thing that I would say is have some go-to phrases that you want to include in any piece of writing that are going to trigger your knowledge of the tenses. So for imperfect, I would use quand j'étais petit, or petite, depending on if you're a boy or girl, or quand j'étais plus jeune, and that's going to remind you to do your imperfect. I would learn something like ce qui m'est important, the thing that's important to me. Or remember, we've looked at ce qui me préoccupe, ce que je trouve important, all those ce qui and ce que phrases. Make sure you've got one of those to pull out of the bag. Another one that's a good one for you to learn as part of your preparation is certains disent que. So certain people say that. And that's a good one to go with je ne suis pas d'accord or je suis d'accord. I think if you can get an il faut sentence in there, that would be good too. And then think about if you've been to any of the Blitz sessions, the sentences that we've prepared in the Blitz session. So mine would be si je buvais plus d'eau, je serais plus en forme here. And your Bianca sentences from the higher level structures set on Quizlet. So what I might do after watching this video is start to make some flashcards of these sentences, things that I could use whatever the topic. I could use these in the technology as well, couldn't I? So when I was little, quand j'étais petit, je n'aimais pas la technologie. I didn't like technology. Aujourd'hui, il faut utiliser la technologie. So today, you must use technology. Ce qui m'est important, c'est mon portable. So the thing that's important to me is my mobile. Certains disent que la technologie, c'est dangereuse. Est dangereuse. So some people say that technology is dangerous, mais je ne suis pas d'accord. And then your C sentence, obviously you'd have to change your verbs here, but si j'avais plus d'argent, j'aurais un iPhone 12, that kind of thing. Bien que je sois technophobe, j'adore mon portable. So there's ways and ways of using these phrases that I've highlighted in orange in whatever the topic is. The other thing that I would suggest you learn is you need to know your time phrases. So things like aujourd'hui, if you can spell it, or if you learn to spell it, that's a really nice time phrase. So it shows that you know you've switched time zones and time in your sentences. So things like la semaine prochaine, we're going to need. Your connectives as well. So your cependant, your par contre, your par exemple. All of those things, if you can learn those as part of your revision, they're going to make that piece of writing much more interesting, and it will flow better as well. And then the final thing for the writing that you should be doing now is have this little checklist in mind of the different tenses, and make sure you know at least 2 or 3 verbs, regular and irregular, for each one, so that when you come to include them in your writing, when you're trying to decide which question to go for, you think about the verbs that you know and you use those. So that's that for question 2. I just want to also point out how the translation is going to look and how you would tackle the translation. Now the translation, this particular translation on the sample assessment, I think is quite tricky, but there are certain things that you are going to find in the translation. So there might be a question in there. You can get around the question in French by making sure that you use correct pronunciation. So have you had any experience in theatre or dance is the same as saying you have had. And we can do that. The verbs are the important bit, so we need to make sure we translate those first. So have you had is the same as saying you have had. We are looking for, that's a verb. Who would like to be? They would like to be. So boys and girls, so they would like to be our new princes and princesses. You do not have to. And then again, to be. The best singer in the world. All that will be asked, it will be asked of you, is to have an abundance of energy. Now that's a lot of vocab that's tricky in there. In order to translate, to work on the translation, you mustn't be put off by the tricky vocab, because remember the mark scheme is that if you get all of the grammar right, but you only partially convey the meaning, you can get some of the marks. So you have had, tu as eu, some experience or any experience in theatre or dance. So I'm going to say tu as eu une expérience dans le théâtre ou dans la danse, remembering to spell it correctly in French, question mark. Okay, we are looking for, so I know that it's new, or we could use the on form of the verb, you get marks for both. Nous cherchons, so that's where I need to revise the vocab. Des garçons et des filles who, so that's a nice connective for writing. Qui would like, so that's our conditional. Oops, that should be an I. So I want that first. Qui aimerait, or you might want to use voudrait, depends on how you've interpreted it. To be, être, our, nos, nouveau. New is one of those adjectives that comes before the noun. Prince, est princesse. You do not have to. So you could say vous ne devez pas. I'm going to use il ne faut pas though. You could say it's not necessary to. Il n'est pas nécessaire because you'd be conveying the meaning. Il ne faut pas. So to be again, être. Le meilleur, the best, which you should know from best friend. Chanteur. Dans le monde or du monde. Making sure to put the punctuation back in. All that will be asked. That's quite nasty. So all that, tout ce, all that which, quand, one, vous, you, will ask, demandera, is, c'est, que, tu as, you have, so is that you have, I'm going to use beaucoup, beaucoup, instead of an abundance, d'énergie. So that is quite tricky. I think the one in your mock is actually a fair bit easier than that. But the key thing with the translation is to start with the verbs and think about what the verbs are saying and try and build around that. And if you don't know a word, for example, abundance, think of what it means. Is there a synonym? And abundance just means lots of, and we know that. So sometimes helps to read through and annotate the English as well. The key thing is not to leave gaps because quite often there are alternative ways to say things. So if we don't know nous cherchons, we could say on cherche. On veut, we would like, on we want. So rather than leave a gap, try and find a way around it. Now it's a 12-mark question. You've got a minute and a half. So that's about it's 18 minutes, about 20 minutes. If you get the 90-word question done quite quickly at the start, that actually gives you a bit more time to focus on the translation, but I wouldn't spend more than 20 minutes on it, and I would make sure you leave time to go back and proofread your essay from earlier, well, both your essays, in fact. Okay, au revoir.